As you know, a couple of days ago, a Pakistani journalist called Ahmad Noorani on his website Fact Focus published General Bajwa's tax returns, as well as those of General Bajwa's wife and General Bajwa's daughter in law. And Mr. Noorani claimed that during the last 6 years, those are the 6 years when General Bajwa was army chief, the Bajwa family has accumulated assets worth more than 12.7 billion rupees. Immediately, as that website went with this information, it was blocked, presumably blocked by the Pakistan authorities. And shortly thereafter, the finance minister announced an immediate inquiry to report back in 24 hours on how the leak of the Bajwa tax returns had happened. Does that suggest that these tax returns are authentic and real, and that the allegation that the family has made 12.7 billion rupees in 6 years is also true?
I would like to say three or four things here. Number one, this is a scoop of the century. Make no mistake about it. It's very rare that details of senior government positions and especially army chiefs are made public like this. These are their tax returns of the entire family. And the journalist in question, Ahmad Noorani and Usman Manzoor, they've done a fantastic job pulling all these details out. Of course, the government and the army will now try and find out how they did so and how these tax returns, which are secret, ended up with them. Now, that's the first thing. So they did a fantastic job. The second thing is that uh, there's been no denial from the army chief or his family members about any of the facts pointed out in these returns. But actually, it's difficult to say that they are not right because they're lodged with the Federal Bureau of so they've taken from the tax records, which are not meant to be public, but they've got access to it. So yes, I mean, there's been no denial. And the third thing is, of course, that um, it has been extremely damaging uh, to General Bajwa's legacy. He was hoping that he would leave this post uh, having uh, opened up the route to to new elections and not asked for an extension. He was hoping that he would bring Imran Khan back into parliament and perhaps uh, sort out some of the remaining political problems that have come from his political interventions in the past. But he wasn't able to do that. Nonetheless, he played a major role in resolving many issues relating to the economy and so on. Uh, if this, he was already a controversial figure because Imran Khan had made him such, and it would have been difficult for him to go out in public without facing harassment or booing from PTI people. But this particular revelation has really undermined his credibility and has cast a new shadow, shall we say, over him. So now, when you hear people will start assessing his legacy and his issues, this will figure majorly in it.
I assume that these are leaks that were made available to Mr. Noorani from inside the army. And if that's right, does it suggest that the army is divided or it has at least serious differences over the issue of General Bajwa?
Well, there is a perception that records such as these are not easy to get hold of, and that uh, perhaps these leaks were inspired. But talking to Ahmed Noorani, who's been at pains to point out that he and his team have been working on this project of theirs for several years, and that this is not a leak from the army, but this is their attempt to dig out some records. So they may have moles inside the Federal Bureau of Revenue and so on, which is the impression that they're trying to convey. And the government has recently also made a statement saying we are looking at various tax officials who had access to this data to find out whether they are the ones who pulled it out and facilitated Ahmed Noorani. But the fact is that Mr. Noorani is at pains to point out that this is not a leak. This is something they extracted by diligence and by hard work and by their moles and so on. So that theory that perhaps somebody in the ISI who doesn't like General Bajwa or has done this, the journalists have said that that's not the case.
Tell me, is this a one off or could there be more leaks, both to do with General Bajwa and possibly to do with other prominent people, whether they're in the army or whether they're civilian politicians? In other words, is there more to come?
Could be, I don't know. Uh, this particular group of journalists, some of whom had to go into exile because they were hounded by General Bajwa's people and the previous regime's people, are determined to dig out facts such as these. That's why they call themselves fact focus. And they're based in the United States. And they have long arms, a lot of colleagues in sensitive media positions. And so their claim is that, look, we are working on these projects in the public interest and we will carry on doing so. So, I mean, they say that they've been working on this project for several years. And so this is how they finally come up with it. Prior to this, they've also done other things. They came up with details of the properties owned by another general, um,
Asim Bajwa.
Asim Bajwa. And there was very little he could do. He couldn't deny most of it. So yes, I think they have good molds and they're uh, determined to pull out scoops such as this. And good luck to them.
What are the consequences for General Bajwa? I know that this has badly damaged his legacy, but beyond that, could there be some form of punishment that he faces? Or is it fairly common for Pakistani army chiefs and senior generals to acquire illegitimate wealth and get away with it?
The question is not of illegitimate wealth. See, if the wealth were illegitimate, it wouldn't have been declared in their tax returns. The tax returns were revised and so on and so forth constantly as the accumulation process went on. But the army chief has enormous powers um, uh, to gift or to create conditions which are legal on paper for the acquisition of assets uh, by himself or by others close to him, plots of land and so on and so forth. So the previous army chief, General Rahil, when he left, the media came up and said, look, it seems that, again, I think Facts and Focus had a role to play, that he had accumulated or given himself plots of land worth 3 billion rupees. That was the figure quoted at that time. Uh, because, the army is in possession of vast acres of land, uh, which they've acquired legally for various purposes. Those purposes are not always met, but the land is then distributed amongst martyrs, their families, officers who've won awards, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, there are quotas for every army officer in Pakistan that during a term of service, he can acquire uh, uh, plots of land from the army's quota of land at throwaway prices. This
Can
is a
I
way of compensating for the low salaries that these officers get during their term of tenure.
Can I ask you a question there? You said this is not necessarily, or maybe not at all, illegitimate wealth. The army has quotas, the army chief has access to a lot of land, which, as you said, may have been intended for other purposes, but to use your phrase again, he can gift it to himself. Now, to non Pakistanis, it may not be illegitimate, but it still feels as if it's improper that the land or the quotas were meant for other purposes, maybe for martyrs, maybe for other army development purposes. But the army chief has the power to legitimately gift it to himself and therefore become richer and richer and richer. Even if it's not illegitimate, it does feel and sound improper. And clearly, in a country that says it's a democracy, is morally wrong.
Absolutely. There's no two ways about it. You're so right. That is the perception of the people of Pakistan that enough is enough. You guys have been, gifting yourselves uh, valuable land, uh, which has been taken away from peasants at throwaway at sort of cheap rock bottom prices, converted into cantonments and defense housing societies, uh, which are supposedly for the welfare of army officers after retirement. But at the end of the day, you end up giving top people end up giving these things to their own relatives and so on and so forth. So yes, it is immoral. There should be accountability, and such powers should be taken away from army chiefs and uh, GHQs. But here's the problem: the army in Pakistan is a vast empire. It's a huge business empire. Ostensibly, the aim of that business empire is the welfare of of soldiers, officers, retired and serving.